What's going on, ladies and gentlemen? Welcome back. This is Around the VLA. It is Wednesday, April 20th. My name is Rob St. Clair. I'm joined from Arizona by Mr. Vince Zanzuki. Vince, welcome back. The last time we talked on this show, we were previewing one of the what turned out to be the craziest single weekend of the VLA season so far. And now that we've had like a week and a half to digest all the craziness that went down, it's high time we do a show to talk about it all. So you watching afar, I mean, we can just jump right into it, to be honest. Watching afar, this event in Louisville, actually not watching afar because we weren't able to watch the matches in person, but as we were getting the text messages about the scores, I was blown away by the things that were going on from the first thing on Saturday morning at the JVA World Challenge. This was crazy. Vince, did I lose you? That didn't take long.
Yeah, you lost me for just a second, but yeah, I got you.
Awesome.
Yeah.
So, just to go over this really quickly, the results from Louisville Central Division regular season: Milwaukee Dive joining Chicago Icemen, Indiana's Team Pineapple, double round robin results. Everybody goes 2-2, almost dead tied in set record, almost dead tied in points, and just a total bloodbath all the way around in Louisville, which I think is exactly what we both kind of thought was going to happen going into it. And sure enough, those teams just absolutely destroyed each other. And for what it sounded like, they put on a phenomenal show, the JVA World Challenge, while doing it.
Yeah, it was crazy. I wish we had the clip from our last around the VLA because that's absolutely what we said. We knew pretty much what was going to happen in this event. And I mean, Dive starting off 3-0. I don't think I quite saw that happening, but them getting victories, yeah, definitely saw them getting two and two across the board. It does not surprise me one bit.
Dude, 4 5 setters out of the 6 matches, all 4 of them involving Team Pineapple. That's 20 sets of volleyball that team played in 2 days. And I was talking to Dryden afterwards. He was like, yeah, legitimately, we were 2 or 3 points away from going undefeated. And they have a case on that because if you see that second match, they lose to Dive in the fifth, 21-23. Like that obviously could have gone anyway. They lose to the Icemen 15-13 in the fifth. That could have gone anyway. The 1 5 setter that they won convincingly was 15-8 over Milwaukee on Sunday, and then they finished the weekend by beating Chicago 19-17 in the fifth. Like, if I'm a Team Pineapple fan and I happen to have been there, that would have taken years off my life watching all those 5 setters.
Yeah, one of the things though is that Pineapple's really finding themselves because, and that's something that they're going to build off of. Going 0-2 the first day, that in tight matches like that, and then being able to flip the script the next day. I mean, those guys are starting to really figure out who each other are, and it shows. I mean, winning against, getting their first victory in the VLA against Iceman is a huge accomplishment. But
Massive.
then also their first actual victory against Dive too, who beat them in the Central Division Cup. So yeah, so I mean they're starting to figure out how to win, and that kind of puts the league on notice as far as Pineapple's definitely someone to be looking out for. So
Yeah, it was the most complete that we've seen them this year by far. They had a deeper roster. They had weapons on the wings. They had a real libero. They had Sean Dryden there, which was a massive difference versus in Chicago. That was really the only thing that they were missing. Then they have a ton of middles. They're one of the deepest teams in the middle in the league. They actually, them and Chicago probably are the 2 deepest teams in the middle that you can put in any of like 4 or 5 guys, and they'll be absolutely world class at that spot. And it does put the league on notice because after losing 2 heartbreakers in a row on Saturday, the way they were able to turn that around is crazy. And I'm excited to get the video and watch some of these matches because I'm really curious to see what went down. By the way, the video is coming in from these. We're getting it slowly but surely all in the same place. So we're going to chop them up, edit them a little bit, and put them on YouTube in the very near future. So we do have video from this event. I promise. We're not just totally speculating, having not seen a single thing. But
yeah.
what I
We,
what
we,
I
we've seen a few things. We've
right.
seen a lot of fan videos going out from it. We
And
appreciate the JVA players, the JVA fans. I mean, they've been putting a lot of things together, sending it to us, and it's actually been really awesome to see all the different little clips and reels and things like that that have gone through our social media and on our YouTube page. So we've seen a little bit of it, and I have no doubt in my mind that it was every bit as epic as the score show.
Yeah, and that's exactly what I was just about to bring up because from the videos that were taken there and from some of the photos that I saw, like there was a high angle photo around that court 67 where the VLA was at, where I mean, not surprisingly, we've been at these events before, but it was great to have like no restrictions of any kind. And sure enough, there were hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of people packed like 5 or 6 deep around that court watching our guys play. And I wish I could have been in 2 places at once because I heard that the atmosphere was just off the charts. And the engagement that we got there in the gym, in the convention center with all those juniors that were playing, we're already seeing the effects of that, like Vince was saying, with the engagement that we've gotten on YouTube, social media, people just sending us clips, videos. Like the guys did autograph sessions, they did a juniors clinic on Saturday night. Like that event was way more awesome than just the matches. And like you can just clearly tell from the score lines, the matches were pretty awesome themselves.
Yeah, no, just through and through. I mean, huge shout out to JVA. We really appreciate that partnership and the people that we are able to play in front of because of our relationship. Running the clinic, obviously, Tim Faulkner took the lead on that and setting that whole thing up. And we actually did get some really good pictures of them working with the kids. And it's just a great environment for us to build volleyball, to grow volleyball, and that's exactly what we're trying to do. So definitely shared vision between the two organizations, between VLA and JVA, and you can't say enough about it. I'm really happy that we, I mean, put obviously one of the best 6 matches you could put in front of a group of screaming fans.
Yeah, and I'm sure the guys got so much more out of it because the fans were there. Like the atmosphere, playing real life volleyball in front of a crowd is really second to none. So I think we did a decent job covering Team Pineapple, considering what we know about the event, their performance, and the fact that they've really kind of cemented themselves as a playoff contender now. And we'll look at the standings in a little bit. But I want to talk about Icemen because getting swept by Milwaukee first thing in the morning lends some substance to our concerns about the Icemen versus Tier 2 teams. We know that that's a weakness of theirs. We saw it at the Chicago Cup where they got like they kind of thought they could sleepwalk past Swede in the quarterfinals, lost 3-0, and were out of the tournament. But I thought that when I learned about that scoreline first thing Saturday morning, I'm like, oh no, don't tell me the Icemen didn't learn a lesson from what happened to them in Chicago. But the rest of the weekend, it seemed like they responded really well. I mean, beating Pineapple tight 5-setter, responding and getting a full 3 points against Dive the next day, and then I mean, 17-19 in that last match, I'm sure could have gone absolutely either way. So a good response from Chicago. I know, and they did that without Sunil Thomas, without Griffin Shields, and without Will Kraft. But still, I expected that roster, like 2-2 for that team this weekend, has to be a little bit of a disappointment, I would think.
Yeah, it's tough to say. I mean, obviously the players you mentioned, Shields, Kraft, and Sunil Thomas, not being there, huge parts of their starting team, starting roster. But at the same time, I think this says a little bit more about Dive and Pineapple than necessarily the Iceman not being able to put them away or to go 4-0 on this weekend. I think what it says is that Pineapple is growing and growing fast, getting confidence, and starting to gel a lot better. Dive has just been explosive since we saw him a month ago,
Wow,
and
have
I
they
mean
ever?
they're a very and it's not no surprise. I mean, when you look at their roster, most of them have VLA experience. It's not like they're coming into this as some no-name team that's never really played before, like a team we'll talk about in a little while. But I mean, they're experienced enough to know that they're going to come and play these teams, and I mean, they're just a solid team, and it's exactly what we expected. There's no surprise from Milwaukee Dive. So as far as Iceman's concerned, I don't think there's too much concern necessarily. As far as VLA Cup goes with their next competition, I think that they're gonna all the tier one teams have to figure it out because obviously no tier one team has won a cup yet, and so I think Iceman is it, if any one team still has the best shot at winning the VLA Cup.
I would agree with you with all the pieces in place, but the the dominance that I sort of expected from Chicago coming into the season, like that we saw in Fort Wayne in January, that kind of set the tone, has not been quite the same since then. And I like that as a fan because the more parity there is in the league, the better. Like I think before in the season, as we were starting to get to know some of these teams, it was the gap from top to bottom in tier one was a lot wider than it is now. I think that the bottom half of tier one have really increased their level, and there isn't a dominant like best team in the league anymore. Whereas I kind of thought there was the first couple months. So that makes it really interesting for me. And I agree with your points about Milwaukee Dive. Like you're right. They have a lot of guys with VLA experience. They got Aurelia Speller back for this event. Milwaukee area guy who played with the SoCal Rising Tide in the past, and like freshly back from playing pro in Turkey, like less than a week back, comes down to Louisville and was probably the best opposite there, if I had to guess. And from what I heard from some of the guys, he was an absolute difference maker to the surprise of nobody who's ever seen Aurelia play the game before. So, and we'll get to the standings in a second. But what's really interesting for me about Milwaukee, and we talked on the last show that it would be very, very unlikely for Milwaukee to catch and leapfrog Swede in the Central Division of Tier 2 and align themselves for that first spot being promoted. But with as well as Dive played against these Tier 1 teams, many points they were able to get, and with Swede and Buffalo not quite as good as maybe they could have been, that race to get promoted out of the Central is way more interesting than I thought it was going to be at this stage.
Yeah, after Swede went to the finals in the Central Division Cup, I thought Swede was going to walk through that. I didn't think that there was really too much Dive could do, especially going against two tier one teams instead of playing in Buffalo, which they could have possibly played against a few of the weaker tier two teams, picked up points that way. Instead, they go to Louisville, and I mean they did almost exactly what they needed to do. They did exactly what they needed to do, but they almost did just as well as they did at the Central Division Cup with grabbing the 9 points as opposed to 11. If you're going to go and grab an average of 10 points every single time you play in an event, you're on a pretty fast track to getting the promotion, whether it's this season or possibly next season. So I don't think that Dive is. I know that they do want to get promoted this season, but at the same time, I think that they're feeling good about where they're at right now, whether they do or not.
Oh yeah, I would feel great if I were them. 20 points in 2 events is insane. I think that's a good time to just take a look at the standings, at least in tier two. So Milwaukee in only 2 events at 5-4, but with so many of those wins against tier one teams, have already racked up 20 points. And Swede with like 27 this year, 32 cumulatively, and have played one more event than Milwaukee has. Like that is not, that race in the Central is not over, like not at all. Remember, it's the first team to 50 points or 2 cup wins in the Central Division gets promoted to tier one or gets offered promotion immediately. So Milwaukee at 20, Chicago at 32. I wouldn't be surprised if we didn't know by the end of this year. Like Swede, if they want to get promoted this year, they need 18 points between VLA Cup and Tier 2 championships, assuming they make it there, which right now they're in a great spot to do so. That's no guarantee. That's not super easy that they can get 18 points in those next 2 events. And if Milwaukee needing 30 points in the next 2 events, that's pretty much impossible unless they win both tournaments. But if you're a Milwaukee fan or a Milwaukee player, you're all you need is for Swede not to get to 50 this year. Because if this goes to next season with neither of them having gotten promoted yet, it is absolutely anybody's game to try and get to 50 first.
Yeah, absolutely, and it really does lay in Swede's hands at this point. Like you said, it's next to impossible if you look at the fact that a team can only grab 12 maximum points playing the 4 matches at the Tier 2 championships. So they would essentially have to win the VLA Cup or not take out a ton of Tier 1 teams, and it would be pretty difficult for Dive to do it this season. So I think that Swedes on the I think it really comes down to what they can do. If it goes into a second year race where it's between the two next season, yeah, I think Dive's got to like their chances.
Yeah, I actually kind of am leaning towards Milwaukee Dive getting promoted first. I don't think Swede is going to be able to get there this year. It's a lot of points in two very, very stacked events. And if they don't get to 50 this year, I think Dive next year really has an opportunity to leapfrog them. So that'll be really interesting to follow. And if you notice on this tier two standings graphic, if you take a look down in the East Division, you see the team in orange there, ECV, East Side Cleveland. And you look across into that second column from the right, and you see a little yellow trophy there. That, Vince, is the craziest. It has to be the craziest storyline of the VLA season so far. A literal worst to first performance. Eastside Cleveland, Team ECV, made their VLA Tier 2 debut in Chicago in early March, finishing dead last, 13th out of 13 teams. And I know that I think they got 3 points there from losing three five
They did go to
setters.
5 3 of their 4 sets,
They
but
went to
yeah.
five a million times. But in that month between getting dead last in Chicago and going to the East Division Cup in Buffalo last weekend, they retooled. They added some guys. That they added 2 unbelievable middles, which certainly helps. But I think a lot of their core was the same setters, same libero, a lot of the same wings. Like we've talked about the learning curve, the VLA learning curve, what it takes to learn how to organize your roster and how to win a VLA Cup Series tournament. They have redefined how that learning curve is done. ECV comes out in the East Division Cup in Buffalo a month after getting dead last, and they win the tournament. Not only do they win the tournament, but they swept a Tier 1 team in the finals. It was convincing. And in the way that Cleveland played in that final, they had no weaknesses. They played perfect, clean, well-rounded, really experienced, like high-level ball. And to figure that out in a month's time after like jumping in the deep end in your first event, finishing dead last, is immediately the storyline of the season.
Yeah, I mean they came out and they obviously from Central Division Cup there were question marks for sure about the team. I talked to Todd and Danny and even some of the players and there were concerns about what was going on. But the thing is they recognized that there were issues that needed to be addressed with their roster and how they were doing things, a little bit of some of the management, and so. Did I expect? I mean, we talked about it on Around the VLA. They were not one of the teams that either you or I picked to win
not at
this
all.
tournament.
They were there
As
came in
opposed to the
totally under
Central
the radar.
Division event 2, we knew exactly what was going to happen. With this, man, we had no idea that ECV was. I don't think anyone that's watching the league from the outside. Maybe I'm sure ECV guys are. Oh yeah, we knew. But they're yeah, sure you had it in the bag, but yeah, we didn't see it coming, and I think that kind of played into some of their advantage as well. Some of these teams maybe went into some of these matches underestimating them a little bit, and they got their rhythm at the right time, right as soon as the tournament started, and they rolled from there. And you got to give them a ton of credit, and you got to give the Tier 2 a ton of credit because this is the type of thing that the VLA. I mean, when we created this league, we could have 8 teams. This is what we do. These are the pros. It's like then we wouldn't have a team ECV coming out and doing what they're doing. And it's as simple as that. And it's amazing that they stepped up and won, and we're really excited about it. The East Division in Tier 2 can't be excited about it.
Well, you're not kidding about that. River City Flow.
River City Flow was I mean they definitely should have had a better performance at the East Division Cup, but had they just done what they did and ECV not gone and win the tournament, they'd still be sitting comfortable at that 1 position. And there's a typo on that graphic because technically ECV is number 1. Winning a cup puts you ahead in first,
yes,
over the points. So yeah, that was an error in that division. Yeah, right there. Yeah, so technically Cleveland Team ECV, they're number one. River City Flow is sitting at number two. But this what makes it interesting is that Cleveland is now a dead set for they're in the tier two championships.
Yep,
They
automatically.
don't. I mean, they could take VLA. They're not. They could take it off VLA Cup off, and they would still be in. So that's more opportunities for them to possibly win another cup. They technically, if you think about it, they could win two if they win VLA Cup and they win Tier Two championships. All of a sudden,
They're promoted all of a
promoted.
sudden.
It's just it's crazy. I mean, crazier things can happen. They just won. They showed that they know how. So, I mean, that's the crazy thing about it is it's in reach now, and I think that they see it. They're going to come out with so much more confidence, more motivation, and you can't give them enough credit right now.
Yeah, couldn't agree more. A couple things I want to add to this. The finals in particular, the match was incredible, by the way. I encourage everyone to go back and watch it from Buffalo. There's a thing that I've been talking about volleyball really a lot the last year or so in the VLA, in Europe, a lot of the European volleyball that I cover, in the Olympics for sure last summer. There's this one theme keeps coming up over and over again, and it's the pressure associated with expectations and how that affects the way a team plays versus when you have you feel no pressure from no expectations, and how we've seen so many times in the last year that playing like that, you play better, you win more. You see these incredible Cinderella stories from teams that nobody was picking coming in. France in the Olympics last summer, great example of that. There were teams that they played on their Olympic run that were feeling pressure, like Poland, that crumbled under it. And France wasn't feeling that at all. Sure enough, they walk away with Olympic gold. All around Europe this year, Perugia, for example, if you follow the Italian league, today even crumbling under the pressure of the expectation of all the championships they're supposed to win. And in the championship match in the East Division Cup, I think the Boston Bounce got to that match. They're like, wait a minute, this is East Side Cleveland. They got dead last in the tournament. They got dead last in Chicago. We beat them yesterday in pool play. This championship match was a rematch from the day before where Boston beat them pretty convincingly in four. They're like, wait a minute, we're in the finals and we have a team that we already know how to beat. This is our champion. This is our tournament to win. We're going to go out and win a VLA Cup tournament. And I think they may have thought themselves into a little bit of a hole there because Cleveland came out in the finals, felt no pressure, played loose, played light, played better than Boston did, and they took it to them and won pretty cleanly in 3 sets. It was really remarkable.
Yeah, I'd like to add on to that kind of that pressure that we're talking about, and a team that didn't perform as well as I think that everyone kind of felt that they would have was Swede. I think that they came into this as coming off such a huge tournament at the Central Division Cup, and I think that they went into this tournament thinking, hey, we did the last one, not quite as big of a pool. Obviously, the only team that stood in our way last time was Ruckus. We got that. Ruckus isn't there. We can take this tournament, and clearly it didn't happen. And they finished 2-2 overall, right? Is that correct?
Yeah, that's correct.
Two,
They
two,
beat
two and two.
beat River City Flow, lost to LVC, then lost to Cleveland in 5 in the quarterfinals before beating Northeast Force in 5 in a really good consolation match. So yeah, 2-2.
Right. Right, 2-2. I mean, they in exactly your pressure. Beat a team that they've consistently beaten, River City Flow. They lost to LVC, which is understandable. Great team.
Not with the roster
Not the
that
LVC
LVC had that
not
weekend, and I want to get to that in a second because that
true,
match
but
Swedes
not
should have won.
still. I mean, LVC is LVC. Those
Right.
guys, they know how to win games.
Yes, they do.
And especially against teams that you would be surprised that they're taking down. But then you get into the tournament play and losing to ECV in that match. There's that expectation of we got to win this. This is a team that technically took third in the pool. Last place last tournament. ECV's playing with nothing on their minds. Swedes thinking promotion this season. They're thinking championship this tournament, and it backfires on them. And so but then, they turn around and they beat Northeast Force, where it's like, okay, pressure's off, we lost, let's go play volleyball, and then they go win a tournament, so or win a match.
Win a
So,
match. Yeah.
you exactly what your point is that there is certain expectations, certain amounts of pressure that is put on some of these teams, and the fact that we will play a maximum of 16 to 20 matches for the entire season, there's not a lot of time to get things done. And so I think that teams and the players do feel a little bit of the pressure of, hey, we got to win now, or that's the season. So I could see where that's coming from.
And that's awesome. It totally validates the structure of the league where every single match matters so much. Every single match is so important as these teams chase down singular point after singular point to try and get promoted or to try and make the playoffs or whatever it is. It's crazy. So I want to go back to the finals really quick. Here, take a look at the whole bracket. Well, no, I'll zoom that out so you get a better view of it. But we can look at the champions. Meanwhile,
So those guys,
yeah, because I
my
really got
boy number 10 holding the cup. Shout out to Joe
Joe.
Borchak.
Yeah, let's start there because they pick up Joe Bortak. Like, what a phenomenal addition that is. One of their weaknesses in Chicago was middles. They had an opposite, Zach Yarrington, playing middle for them for most of that tournament, and that's not a recipe for success. You need middles. You need really, really good middles to succeed in this league, especially against Boston in the finals, who has phenomenal middles. So
Great,
you
yeah.
get Joe Bortak and you get Jared Kelso, who both owned those individual matchups. They destroyed Neil Ferraro, Francis Kokoris, and Skylar Kaufman in the finals. I couldn't believe how well they handled those matchups. Then Jacob Layton, number 4 in white there on the very right side, one of their captains, doesn't look like a world-class volleyball player, but that dude has a world-class arm. My goodness, some of the shots that guy was hitting, goofy-footed approach, like doesn't contact the ball that high, but he just has an absolute cannon. And then across from him, you see number 12 there, Lee Smith, like a prototypical 6'6" Penn State, like white collar, like high level experienced volleyball player. And then Michael Krieg at the opposite, who came in for Kyle Mars, who got hurt. Connor Martin, setter, MVP of the tournament. Like Sean Martin, his brother, Libero. Like, they deserve so much credit for the learning that this Cleveland team did the last month, how they were able to organize this team coming into this tournament. They take third in their pool, whatever, no big deal. They beat Sweden, a crazy 5-setter. They beat Niagara Frontier, who played really well, who we'll talk about in a second, and they sweep the finals. It was super impressive. But I want to talk about Boston as well, because in that final, like I talked about Boston's the expectations, the opportunity that they had. There were some interesting strategic things going on there that I talked about on the broadcast. The first 2 sets, like Boston started off with 3 of their bench players. They were really trying to play the system in how you manage your roster in a VLA Cup tournament to try and keep guys, like, to keep their weapons really ready to play. But this is the finals. Like, if there's a time to lean on the weapons that got you there, it's in the finals. The time to start with some of your backups and then pull in the starters if you need them is not the finals. It's a couple matches before that. The other thing was that they were extremely, extremely conservative from the service line. It was very intentional. They were every one of them, all 6 servers were float serving, except maybe Francis Kokoris to start the match. But everybody, nobody was given the green light. Everyone was keeping the ball in play. Until they go down 2-0, they were putting on no pressure. ECV's side-out percentage was sky high until Boston, like, they changed. They very consciously changed that. They put in the starters. They started going after it from the service line because they had no choice. And they got very, very close in that 3rd set, but ended up getting stuff blocked to lose the match. That was very, very interesting tactical management, and I don't think that it paid off. Well, obviously it didn't pay off for Boston just from the scores, but I think they overthought the moment just a little bit and took what was a very good opportunity to win the tournament and jump way up the rankings, and they thought themselves into a bit of a deficit there.
Yeah, they were missing some guys. Like, obviously, Jeff Vatron usually is starting outside for them, and maybe creates a little bit more of that depth. Also, him being one of the captains of the team, maybe that influence. Not that they don't have good coaching or anything like that, because they do. They're actually one of the better coach teams in the league. However, that is definitely not the time to do it. And I could see where,
No.
looking at their matchups, I mean, they probably were like, okay, let's take care of Flo, which they went to 5 with. They barely got through that one. And then LVC, obviously, first opportunity to beat them with a weakened roster, and so they have to win that one, obviously. But yeah, I see where Ruckus does what they do, where they occasionally will give up those 2 sets, and it's almost like they're throwing pawns out there to get taken down, and then they'll go out and win the set in 5 with a fresh starting lineup, right? Um, Boston Bounce hasn't proved they can win that way yet, and obviously the finals is not the time to do that. So yeah, I agree 100%. Huge missed opportunity for Boston Bounce, and that was a good opportunity for them to define themselves as a potential contender. Because I have a feeling that the way that the things will pan out for the rest of the season, they have a pretty good shot that they're going to make the Tier 1 championships. But I don't think that just kind of makes them vulnerable, I think, and I don't think that they did what they possibly could have with better management.
Yeah, I agree, again, I totally agree. They're one of the better coach teams in the league. I think Konstimov does a fantastic job with that group, but I do think they overthought the moment a little bit there. So going down the rest of the bracket, we've alluded to Team LVC a couple times, or let's just show up the final standings. I know, like I had Team LVC power ranked #1 in the league. We had them as our favorites to win this tournament. However, I think this performance, especially going 3-0 on day one before losing to Boston in the semifinals, huge win for Team LVC given the circumstances. Friday night, they had 3 starters coming in from Long Island have their flights get canceled, and they couldn't get there. They didn't show up. They ran Eric Martin, a 50-year-old 5'6" setter, played all the way around all 4 matches, and LVC still went 3-1. And to do that they picked up a couple guys literally the night before the tournament started because of those last minute cancellations. They still went 3-1. Dave Evans was a monster. Blake Leeson, freshly back from Germany, was a monster. The fact that they still went 3-1, given that, and having to play like they were blocking with 2 guys in the front row for half the rotations. Like E wasn't even bothering to block, and that was a good move. Lance and Schlagler figured that out pretty well in the front court for the most part. LVC going 3-1 with that lineup, huge success for them. Speaking of huge successes, the debut of the Niagara Frontier was remarkable. It took them a couple matches to figure it out, as it certainly does with every VLA team. But as we were looking at their roster coming into the weekend, we're like, wait a minute, this is not just like this is not a team looking for a participation trophy in their own gym. Like they're putting together a program that's trying to compete for a thing or two here. And sure enough, they went down in the quarterfinals to the Northeast Force. Northeast Force won their pool, by the way. So the 2 versus 7 in overall seeds. Niagara Frontier goes down 24-20 in the 4th, down 2-1. They fight off 4 match points to win that 4th set in extra points, and ended up winning it in 5 to advance and get on the podium in this tournament at home. And that wasn't a fluke. They deserved that. They played phenomenally good volleyball for a team never playing VLA before. So huge shout outs to the Niagara Frontier. I was very impressed by them, and it sounds like they're going to try and make a run of VLA Cup as well.
Yeah, they are going to make VLA Cup, which is awesome. We're really excited at obviously seeing that roster before the tournament. I know I texted you and I was like, dude,
wait a minute,
Niagara Frontier's legit.
Yeah,
And
they played like it. They played
yeah,
like it. Will Cornell set a really good offense. Eli Irizarry, all tournament libero, very well deserved. They had firepower on the wings. They had good middle play. Mike Gold, one of my boys from Detroit, drove out and played with them that weekend. He was awesome. Like that team made a statement.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's just another team popping up in the East that's like, wow, this division is actually pretty solid now that you look at these teams. And again, I say Flo's got a pretty decent lead in one aspect of it. Obviously now ECV has a lead in the cups. It's gonna become a battle soon. It's gonna be more apparent, I think, next season. I obviously none of these teams, ECV, I hate to say it, I'm they're probably not going to win the next two events they play in, but at the same time, like it's gonna be a race now. It's gonna be tight, and that's exciting for that division because it's gonna just create much better volleyball, huge growth out of the East, and not surprised at all by it because the East has so many good programs. Great Division three, obviously you got your Penn State, George Mason, all the new St. Francis Brooklyn, great programs that are consistent, solid. But now it's like, wow, they're playing our league. So it's fantastic to see, just that these players have places to go, and it's great for us.
Totally. Yeah. So moving on down the rankings of finishers. We already talked about Swede a good amount, finishing in fifth, 2-2. Had some pretty good opportunities. I really think they should have beaten Team LVC to win that pool on Saturday, and given the lineup that LVC had, and that would have changed their path in the bracket. However, Swede was rolling. They had to roll with some punches as well. They had a couple guys get hurt. They had Ethan Klosak go down with cramps and couldn't finish the match against ECV, which he is probably their best player on the wings. And with him, you could easily make the argument that they win that match. Same with Mike Boduk was dealing with a knee injury. He's their best middle. So they had their unfair share of adversity, but there were some opportunities that Swede didn't capitalize on. River City Flow, given the roster that they had, which wasn't their full like starting seven that they had in Chicago that played so well. They showed flashes of really good ball as well, but they lose another one to Swede head to head, and then they lose a marathon to Boston Bounce in 5. Just like little tiny things here and there that can put River City Flow to just that little bit of a next level as a team that I might pick to even win Tier 2 championships this year. They're just not quite there yet. They're very, very close. They're not quite there yet for me. Quentin Moore coming back from Germany was huge, but they need to get all the guys in a little more consistently, and they need more depth. You can't roll in with 8 guys again and really only play 8 guys the entire tournament and expect to survive in these events.
Yeah, you definitely see where they have a tough time near the end of tournaments.
Yeah.
This one wasn't quite the same. I mean, running against Swede for whatever reason, Swede just has their number at the moment. I mean, going 3-0 since last year against them, and so yeah, they have the depth. I feel like overall, it's whether or not the entire roster can make an entire event.
Right.
And I think they have 12 to 14, 15 guys. I know that for VLA Cup they'll have Rivera, who was previously with
New York Pride, yeah.
New York Pride. And so I know they're making moves to build that roster up, and I think they recognize clearly that they do need a little bit more depth. But at the same time, if I think when it was a 2-horse race between them and Pride, they were a little comfortable. I think now that ECV's in the mix, and then now Niagara Frontier is starting to show that they are going to be contenders as well. I think River City Flow is definitely going to be a team that's like, okay, well, let's pick this up a little bit more. I know that they are really hunting for that first promotion. So they're still in the lead as far as points go, but it's how they put the team together, I think, for next year, and what Sam Aldis and Drucker do with the roster. So I still think that they're in a good place, but I agree, again, it's whether or not they get the depth.
Right, and that division is infinitely more competitive after ECV won that tournament than we all thought it was going in. Last but not least, Northeast Force and West Coast Brigade tying for 7th. That doesn't really reflect how well I think Northeast Force played. I mean, they won their pool. They beat the Boston Bounce head-to-head to win that pool. Then they lose a crazy 5-setter against Niagara Frontier, which up 24-20 in the 4th. You've got to win that match. And then they lose the crazy 5-set consolation match against Swede, which was really, really good, like way better than the average consolation match. So they finish in 7th, but at least they get on the board on the season. They get some points. They really started to play some better volleyball. We talked about them before, the Northeast Force, like one of their huge weaknesses in Connecticut was serving. They served the ball like absolute trash. But the nice part about this was that it's an easy fix. And this tournament, they served significantly better. They didn't throw so many points away. They blocked the ball better as well. I thought Ryan Thomas was really good. And then they picked up a couple other pieces, and I was actually overall impressed by Northeast Force despite the finish. And then West Coast Brigade, another team, hit with some last-minute flight cancellations. So they couldn't get Carlos Rivera there because his flight got canceled at the last second. And without their starting setter and kind of the heart and soul of their team, even though they had some size and some talent on the wings, and with Noel Lissandro in the middle, without a real setter, they were really in serious trouble. So they weren't able to get any points, and their opportunities to make Tier 2 championships now look kind of bleak.
Yeah, it's unfortunate about Carlos Rivera not being able to make that flight out there, because again, he is the heart and soul of that team for
Yeah.
sure. One of the best setters in my opinion that's playing in the tier two, and he really makes that team click. And they had all the pieces, and they were set up, I felt, to maybe advance out of the first round for sure, in this tournament. But when you have all the pieces except for that one, and setter's a kind of important piece.
Yeah,
So
maybe a little.
so yeah, that's unfortunate for them. I know that they discouraged about the results, still not discouraged about the competition. I mean, I think they know it was circumstantial.
Yeah, yeah.
I know that some of these teams will look at going 0-4 and not going across the country going 0-4 in a tournament, and maybe thinking, hey, let's just throw in the towel or something like that. They're not. They're hey, let's do well at VLA Cup, and let's get to the Tier 2 championship. So I know that they're motivated, and I think that they will come out, and hopefully we see the Brigade that we know that they can be at VLA Cup, because the finish that they have doesn't represent who they are.
Yeah, I agree. And I think even given the roster they had, attention to detail is a problem for them. They need to clean up the little areas of the game that at the highest levels like the VLA, you've got to execute every time on these little things. Handling and terminating free balls, like organizing your defense, like service errors to a degree. Their serve receptions pretty rough. They've got to shore up their ball control just a little bit, because they have the weapons, and when Rivera's there, they have the setter that can really hang in both side out and transition with some great teams. But the attention to detail definitely needs some work for them. So I hope that they can bring all that together just a little bit more at VLA Cup, and I would guess that they will. So this, after all that we've just talked about, all that volleyball that happened in the same weekend in two different places in the VLA, this is a little look behind the scenes in our database just for all the matches that were played. Like, this is just a crazy amount of output that the league had that one weekend in two different places. Look at all the five setters. There were 9 5-setters in two different places that whole weekend. Almost no sweeps. There were only 5 sweeps. 5 sweeps and 9 5-setters. Like, that ratio is just ridiculous. So I just thought it was kind of a cool look at just all the volleyball that we played, that we packed into that one crazy weekend. And now it's, before I unveil my latest subjective rankings, we've got to take a look at the objective. So Tier 1 standings. No movement in the West. Sport Connect's Ascension Rising Tide have not played since the last time we took a look at this, but Icemen and Team Pineapple have. The Icemen take a commanding lead in terms of season-long points with 27. I mean, they've played the most matches out of anyone. They've played 13 matches, and with as good of a team that they are, you shouldn't be surprised that they're leading Tier 1 right now, but firmly in control of their division. The thing, though, for me, was the resurgence of Team Pineapple. That division is not quite the foregone conclusion that we initially thought it was. It is not impossible based on what happens at VLA Cup. It could be possible for Team Pineapple to win that division, and it doesn't even necessarily have to mean they win the tournament, which, based on who I know they're bringing to VLA Cup, that could happen. But Pineapple's improvement, event over event, is promising to me. And then looking into the East, LVC, despite their hardships with their roster, still record-wise looking outstanding at 7-1. Boston, despite the high finish second place, only went about 500 on the weekend. I think 3-2 total, which I would have expected them to be a little bit better. And then Northeast Force getting on the board, and not just getting their first couple wins, but getting 8 points out of it was pretty solid as well. So again, the gap between first and last in Tier 1 is a lot thinner than it used to be.
Yeah, and I give huge credit to Force. We knew that they were going to get points in this tournament. I expected about 8. That seemed about where I thought they would go. I did not expect the parity in how they were going to achieve those 8. I didn't expect them to go and
Win
beat
the
Bounce and
pool,
win
then
the
lose in the
pool,
first
and then
round.
go in the first round. I expected a little bit different than that, but at the same time, I give them credit because they can't be written off at this point. They've got an event coming up next where they prove that they can beat Bounce, and so they can beat an East Division rival. And so if they can continue to do that, all of a sudden they leapfrog a handful of teams and get themselves set up nicely for a good run at VLA Cup. Boston Bounce, I feel are playing like you said. I feel like they're playing this season the same way that they played that finals. I feel like they are, they're winning. But then it's kind of let's get everyone going instead of finding out, okay, who are our guys? And I think that I think they need to figure that out this next coming event. I don't think that they can wait long enough to wait for the VLA Cup to decide their fate in the league as far as the playoffs go. So I think that they're going to need to step up big in the next one. And then I think if Team LVC fields the team that they can for the East Division 2, I think Team LVC could run away with this division, especially after going 7-1 with the roster that they had. So, not to put pressure on them. Sorry everyone, all the pressure we put on you guys, but
That's the thing about
Team
LVC,
LVC.
though. LVC is impervious to that. They, like you said earlier, that team just knows how to win. They know how to manage situations. They know about expectations and pressure and late stages and sets, being clutch and getting key points when they need them. Like that is the team that I trust. I think more than any other team in the league. If you put them at 20-20 in a game or 10-10 in the fifth set, I'm going to pick LVC over any other team in the league because of the experience in those situations that they've showed. And I mean, if they played a 5'6" setter all 6 rotations and went 3-1 in a deep tournament and like beat Swede in 5, they played really well against good teams with that roster that they had. And that once that like they're not going to have that problem again. They're going to defend against the possibility of last minute flight cancellations and having to go through that again. I think they are going to run away with this division. I think they're clearly the best team in the East, top to bottom. They're going to get Greg Petty back very shortly. You're going to see Joby Ramos again. You saw what Blake Leeson did last weekend. Like that team is scary. Combine the talent with I think the most maturity and most ironclad mental game of any team in the league, and they're really a championship contender.
Yeah, and that's one of the things about Team LVC is they remind me a little bit of the old Team Pineapple, where
Yeah,
they had a really
yeah,
tight knit group where they're all boys, right? And that's one of the things where when you're that way, you're not just a bunch of guys that kind of come together for a tournament, right? Like these guys are they're friends. So when they go out and they compete with each other, you're going to see that same kind of respect in a way that you don't look across and have an expectation. You just know this is the guy that I'm playing with, and I'm going to, this is what he's going to bring, and I'm going to bring what I can bring. And that's what you see out of this Team LVC that changes and variates from time to time, and so I think that's what gives them a huge advantage because I don't think that there is an overall expectation for some of these guys. I think that they just, hey, we're going to go out and play, and we're going to play as a group, and we're going to have positive attitudes about it, and I think that kind of separates them and gives them that advantage over a lot of teams, and that is I think one of the reasons that they got that 5-set victory over Bounce back in February.
yeah. I
It's
agree.
just you
I
got
agree.
guys that trust each other and guys that just are going to continue to play and not get down or not get upset. They're not going to. They just don't break down. So yeah. So I think I agree with your opinion about Team LVC about how they proceed, and that's one of those things that makes them scary to a lot of teams when it comes to VLA Cup. But I don't think that the East Division will be wrapped up. I don't think you can. I don't think a playoff spot will be solidified even still after this next tournament or next event.
Yeah, I agree. So the East Division will be the next backup in action in about a week and a half. We'll be in Boston the last weekend of April, as not just another double round robin, a classic Tier One regular season event with LVC Bounce and Force at Eastern Nazarene College near Boston. So we'll be there for that, and that'll give us the last piece of Tier One action heading into VLA Cup. We can decide some seedings, but with VLA Cup still to be played, even if LVC walks out of there undefeated, they might like mathematically have a playoff spot clinched, but still nothing is decided until the VLA Cup's over. So, with all that said about the latest the up to date standings in the season, it is time for my opinions, my top to bottom 1 through 8 latest power rankings of VLA Tier 1 look like this. Only a little bit of movement this time compared to last time, and it's all right in the middle of the pack. I did not move Team LVC from number 1. A lot of the reasons why we just said, even though they lost their first match of the season, they didn't make it to the finals of the East Division Cup, but going 3-0 on that first day with the roster that they had and the situations that they were put in really solidified them as a team that I continue to have a lot of respect and a lot of faith in going into the crunch time this season. Sport Connect stayed at number 2 for me, and they haven't played since the last time we did one of these. But the reason Chicago, the Icemen, stayed at number 3 and didn't leapfrog Sport Connect to number 2 is because of how volatile that Central Division event was, and how Chicago got swept by Dive that first match. And I don't like the way that team handles Tier 2 teams right now. They've really got to be more convincing in those matches that they're favored to win. For me to bring them back up to the top of the rankings where I had them to start the season. So no movement 1 through 3. I've still got LVC, Sport Connects, and Iceman in that order. Then I got some movement. I got Pineapple moving into the top 4, getting to 500 at 6-6, and the volleyball that they played in Louisville there, and Dryden's got a point. They were legitimately like 2 or 3 or 4 points away from going undefeated in that event with playing 4 5-setters and losing 2 of them in extra points in the 5th set. So the ascendance, the rate of growth that we're seeing from Team Pineapple, I'm really high on them, and I think they have a higher ceiling than the Boston Bounce, who I have at number 5, moving up from number 6. Again, it's the opportunities that they've had that they haven't quite capitalized on. You mentioned that 5-setter in Connecticut where they were up 14-11 in the 5th over LVC, couldn't get that one done. They had a great opportunity to beat Cleveland and win a cup tournament. Couldn't get that one done. I still think they're very, very, very good at every position, but other than maybe in the middle, I don't think they're great. And their team has yet to graduate from very good to great, in my opinion. So, and still hovering about 500. I've got them at 5. Then, like Rising Tide was leapfrogged by those 2 teams because they played better more lately, and I still have a very bad Rising Tide taste in my mouth from the last event in Arizona, but we do know how high their ceiling is. Same thing, no movement from Ascension. I know that, Vince, you guys have been working hard. You guys have played some great ball there in Arizona, but we haven't seen you in like 2 months. So I couldn't justify moving you guys anywhere. But even though the Northeast Force played some good ball, they got some wins on the board. I couldn't put them over Ascension. I would still pick Vince's guys to beat Northeast Force head-to-head 7 or 8 times out of 10. And Force just hasn't put it all together on the Tier 1 level just yet. However, it's not nearly a slam dunk of an 8th place as it was back when they went 0-4 in Connecticut. So that's my power rankings as of right this moment, mid-April, with more East Division regular season coming up next and then heading into VLA Cup. This is just my perceptions of Tier 1 right about now. Vince, what are your thoughts? You agree with me for the most part?
Yeah, yeah, I really can't really can't complain too much, but the one that I see, I agree with the power rankings, top to bottom. I see that had Team Pineapple been able to close out one of those, I definitely would have put them over Iceman. You look at what's happening to Iceman right now is they are becoming more susceptible to losses. I think the Tier 2 teams give them a little bit of tantrums, but then now that's let it open to tier one teams who Team Pineapple was the first tier one loss that they've had since
Since
the very
2020.
first
Yeah.
match they ever had in tier one play. So, I mean, in 2 years, that's your first loss, and now it's like, okay, that's not only a division rival, but that's a team that's surging at the moment, and that's got to be concerning for Iceman. But it's a huge confidence builder for Team Pineapple. Even if Pineapple had gone 3-1 and they had split with Iceman, I probably would have put them above them. But since it was a 2-2, you really can't throw them over Iceman. LVC clearly gets the number one nod. I mean, after what they did, showing that they can win with their depth, one of the things that some of these teams just have shown they can't do.
Right. Great point.
And so yeah, so I gotta say, Force, Ascension, that battle right there at the bottom, they pretty much did exactly what we did in the West Division Cup, where they played consistently, won some matches, and then lost, matches they probably should have won,
Yeah, lost
and that's
earlier in the
what.
playoffs, and they probably should have. Yeah, it's very similar.
Right, and so it's one of those things where, well, actually, they did exactly what we did. We went 2-0, and then both of us went 2-0, and then lost in first in the playoffs. And yeah, and so the only difference is we were able to get two victories over a very weak Rising Tide. Now Force has to basically get a couple wins this weekend. If they can't, they're going to sit at 8. If they can, then I would see where they would potentially play 7 over us. So it's really all on them and who comes out and performs.
Yeah, the West Division, just like and you certainly know firsthand, just sitting back on the West Coast and watching the rest of the league just destroy each other elsewhere. It's probably been really interesting, but I'm sure you guys are just itching to get back into action at the VLA Cup, as I certainly am. It's been way too long since we've seen the West Division in action, and the Rising Tide in particular, I think, are the biggest wild card in this entire rankings. We know that the level of volleyball that they can play is a heck of a lot better than sixth in the league. We saw it at West Division Cup, but like the embarrassment of a team they put out there in Arizona, myself included, I literally had to play for that team in that event. The inconsistency, the lack of just really consistent management that team's going through right now, I don't know how to predict what they're going to do, and I could see so many things happening with the Rising Tide. I could see them winning the West Division. I could see them coming out and winning the VLA Cup, or I could see them completely flopping and missing the playoffs. I have no idea how to evaluate the Rising Tide, and they're really an interesting component in who's going to be the top 6 teams that make the playoffs.
Yeah, I think though, I think they can definitely put a squad together for VLA Cup that would be fantastic. Obviously, when they're playing at home, they could put an amazing team together.
Which we're going to see
However,
in May. Like the last regular season event is West Coast. It's in Long Beach. They'll have no excuses in that one.
yeah, absolutely. And but the thing I don't see, I would never see in a power ranking Rising Tide higher than 2. And I could definitely see them down at 8. And that, I mean, that's the range that they have with the rosters that they could provide. I think one of the things that's hurting them is that they aren't playing consistently, and a lot of these other teams are. And I think that that's going to come into play. It did last year at the VLA Cup, where they got beat by Team LVC pretty handily, and then they kind of went through an easier path because of where Iceman fell
Right.
after going 0-2 in pool play. And because of that, there was a stack, the lower bracket and then the higher bracket from the higher pools or whatever had Rising Tide going through some easier teams to get to the finals. So even if they fielded that team this year, I still wouldn't see them finishing. In my opinion, I don't think they even make the semis this year.
Yeah, I don't disagree with that. They're really going to have to put their best possible foot forward if they're going to make that Sunday at VLA Cup, because it's not going to be the path they had last year. It's literally double the number of teams, and the level of volleyball is going to go absolutely through the roof. So, yeah, if these rankings, I think, are really subject to the wild card that is the Rising Tide, because I don't know what to expect from them, and the next time we'll see them is at the big one at VLA Cup, and I think is a pretty good segue into wrapping up the show with talking about what's coming up next. We talked about the Boston event, so that's I think April 30th, May 1st are the dates on that. That's not this coming weekend, but the following weekend in Boston with just the three East Division Tier 1 teams. Pretty classic format there. Then that's it until VLA Cup. So the next time we're probably going to do this show is leading into VLA Cup, where the Tier 1 seeds will be decided. The Tier 2 teams in a certain order based on their placing will actually have an opportunity to pick their seed and pick what pool they end up in, like pick which Tier 1 teams they get to play against in pool play at VLA Cup. So that process is going to be really interesting, and that will all be unveiled on Around the VLA the next time we do this show. And that tournament, VLA Cup, mark your calendars, boys and girls, May 13th, 14th, 15th in far northeastern Indiana at Lois Place in Angola. That, and I'm going to say this, we've said it before, I'll say it again, will be the greatest men's volleyball, top to bottom, in a weekend ever played on American soil, not by the national team. I will stand by that, and I will hope that event backs me up on that. Vince, I think you agree with me there, right?
I think it's impossible for it not to happen, knowing who's going to be at that tournament, knowing the amount of teams, 20 teams going to be there. It's going to be absolutely phenomenal, and I just there's so it's going to be something that I don't even think that we can understand how big it's going to be until after it happens. Then we're going to be like, wow. So. And there's a lot of exciting things, a lot of news that we're about to drop on people in a couple of weeks about that event in particular. I think the format, doing the draft style pool plays, giving the Tier 2 teams an opportunity to select their matchups is something very very unique. I know I've never heard of it being done, honestly. I think it's a huge opportunity for them to have a say in where they stand. There's going to be some tactical moves going on where they're going to see, hey, maybe we feel better against this team, or hey, maybe we need to, we just got to step up and play against this one so we get an easier, second round. There's going to be some things that go on, and I hope that these teams really put some, thought into where they go, instead of just, and we could be like most leagues where we're just, hey, you're 9, you're 10, you're 11, and that's where you're falling based off your rank. But I think that that puts teams, since the Tier 1 teams aren't going to be doing that, it puts Tier 2 teams at a huge disadvantage to just be placed where they fall.
Right.
Right. So I think that it's going to be a very, very interesting concept from the very start, and then just the fact that we're packing a 20-team elimination tournament in a 3-day span is maybe a little crazy by us. I don't know. Maybe we're biting off more than we can chew. I'm not sure. But I did the numbers in my head. I think it's gonna work, and we'll see. I couldn't be more excited about it.
Yeah, so we'll have a lot more coming out about that event. So many storylines. I mean, it's just crazy. I don't even know where to begin, but we'll save all that for the next show. So we'll see you, ladies and gentlemen, in Boston. Not this weekend, but the following weekend in Boston, and then it'll be all eyes on the VLA Cup. So until then, thanks very much for watching. It's been a great show. To see a little action in the chat from Todd. So we love when you guys hop in the chat and mess with us in real time. It's always fun to see. Thanks everyone for watching. Vince, great to talk to you, man. Thanks for joining us. We'll see you all in Boston. Thanks for watching.
Yeah, take care.